And if that and the GATT Treaty and the WTO aren't enough, there's a new one in the works. A new one so nasty that negotiations themselves were kept secret until they got leaked onto the French internet. This is the Multilateral Agreement on Investments, the MAI Treaty, which basically is designed to not only nuke individual laws through complaints to the WTO like GATT, but force governments to abolish all these laws altogether in favor of whatever it is corporations want. No more worker and safety protections, no more environmental regulations, no more democracy anywhere. Essentially, corporations can sue any country or any government within that country for the right to profit. And any law that gets in their way has got to go. For example, minimum wage. For example, local ownership of things like radio stations. For example, low-interest government loans to small businesses run by people inside the country. Same with hiring preferences, can't give them tax cuts, and you can't reward businesses for being more environmentally or labor safety conscious because that would be a violation of the MAI Treaty of Corporations über alles. It even has specific language banning the kind of economic sanctions we put on South Africa that helped destroy their apartheid government. And if you don't like things like NAFTA, GATT, and the Nazi World Order, well, there's a prison cell waiting for you. And if this isn't waiting for you this month, perhaps the newer prison will be open next month. As I was saying before, we are moving from the military-industrial complex to the prison-industrial complex, a new arms race being basically war on the American people. And to get the American people to put up with this is, again, use it as a tool of resegregating, get those alleged super predators with the wrong skin color out of sight, out of mind, ethnic cleansing American style, known as the drug war. Thanks largely to the drug war, the number of people in jail in this country is now the highest per capita of any country on earth. We're worse than China. We're worse than Iraq or Iran. We are worse than Nigeria or South Africa or Russia. In California, there are now 6 times as many people in jail as there were in 1980, and the prisons are still going up. And people are getting thrown in for flimsier and flimsier excuses. 3 strikes, you're out increases the number. And now Clinton's decided that in order to get tougher on drugs, he wants to spend $200 million. Think of what $200 million would do for all the people thrown in the street because of the welfare cuts. But no, it's much more important to spend $200 million to have America the first country in the world with drug-free prisons. Be serious. I mean, what happens if you've got laws like that on the book and they're piss-testing prisoners all the time is you're already finding cases where people get locked up as a suspected gang member or for smoking crack or something. Okay, strike 1. Then, if you get written up for getting in a fight with a guard or something, of course they're going to take the guard's word, strike 2. Another fight, fail your piss jar test, strike 3, you're never getting out of jail, and the prison industrial complex can keep expanding and making more and more money for themselves. In California, a prison guard now makes almost twice as much salary as a teacher. There's family values for you. Their union is considered among the most powerful in the state. I mean, these sentences are ridiculous. It even hit the straight papers a while back that a woman named Kemba Smith in Washington got 24 and a half years in jail thanks to Clinton's new drug laws and stuff because she admitted she was involved with, she turned in her boyfriend for dealing drugs, and the government promised cooperation, but under the mandatory sentencing, that was what she got. In Florida, a woman just got 15 years for stealing 2 packets of T-shirts, while meanwhile, in California, the first person who got 3 strikes life sentence was somebody who stole a car battery. And there's also been life sentences in California now for sitting in a stolen truck, stealing a slice of pizza, stealing a can of soda, and stealing your cousin's TV set. Life in prison. I mean, in Texas, they've got people locked up down there for life for stealing a can of beer as well. I mean, this is just more evidence that we are living in the fall of Rome. We worry about all these trade deficits with other countries, and China may have more prison labor than we do, but not for long. This is a way of reinstituting slavery in this country. There's been talk of forcing prisoners, especially three strikes people, to clean up toxic waste sites that nobody else wants to touch. And you don't have to pay people a whole lot if you've got them doing jobs inside prison. For example, next time you call for reservations on TWA, there's a chance it may be somebody locked up who's doing the phone work for you. TWA was actually able to use this as a threat to prevent their flight attendants from going on strike. Because if they went on strike, they were then going to move the people from the front counter in the airport into the flight attendant's position and move all the phone work into the prisons. So no strike. Great way of bullying unions into not asking for any health benefits or occupational safety or wage increases, or better yet, ceasing to exist. Macy's uses prison labor now. Bank of America uses prison labor. And in Oregon, they're even taking the prison laborers' money back. $6,000 a year rent for their cells. That's what they do in Oregon now. Oh, they charge for the food too?
$1.50 a meal.
$1.50 a meal. That's about what you'll make a day. Private prisons have grown in number by a factor of 30 over the last 10 years. And of course, in private prisons, even some of the guard unions are against them because private prison guards get way below guard union wages. And if they were so out of control in the violence department in the state prison system, there's no regulation preventing them from getting the same job in the private prison system. A relative of mine who got locked up in the state prison system of Colorado was put in a privately owned prison. And here was somebody trying to turn his life around and get a GED and get into college, and the prison had no library. They had a TV, but no library. And here's a field of bad dreams for you. The largest private prison company in this country, the Corrections Corporation of America, sees so much money in the private prison boom, which is the fastest growing sector of our economy now, by the way. They're putting up a $100 million giant private prison in the Mojave Desert, and they don't know who's going to use it yet. It's the field of bad dreams. Build it and the slaves will come, whether they want to be there or not. This also means that private prison corporations and the guards lobby have a direct financial motive for lobbying legislatures for more three strikes laws, more drug war money, harsher and harsher sentencing, and even torture devices. The torture reports coming out of the California state prison system are absolutely horrifying at this point, especially in Pelican Bay up north near Crescent City, which is supposed to be where they house the most incorrigible and worst of the worst criminals. But they're also throwing kids in there, hoping that they will be able to force them to crack up and testify against their friends for being in gangs. You know, it's used as a torture device. And one prisoner recently won a suit against Pelican Bay because guards threw him in a tub of scalding water and held him under. Things like that. Meanwhile, in Corcoran State Prison in Southern California, it's been uncovered that the guards had a little game where they would deliberately allow somebody from one prison gang or faction and then somebody from a rival to mysteriously wander unbeknownst to each other into a commons area. And then if they started fighting, the guards would shoot one of them to death. And they're letting this go on in the state prisons. You know, with all these people being thrown in for small-time drug offenses and things like that, I do have to ask what the hell happens when they all get out. I mean, maybe that's why they're trying to pin more three strikes offenses on them while they're inside jail, because there sure as hell ain't any real attempt at rehabilitation or education or anything like that. And thanks to the Clinton-Gingrich crime bill of a couple years ago, there is now no more money for legal services, which they're trying to abolish altogether. You know, federally enacted law providing lawyers for poor people who can't afford them and stuff. Now, a legal services lawyer is not allowed to take a case involving prisoners' rights or abortion or immigration. And to avoid any more reports coming out of Corcoran or Pelican Bay, Pete Wilson has banned prisoners from being allowed to talk to the press. Not that the mainstream press would care. It's much more important night after night to have O.J., John Bonet, Monica, O.J., John Bonet, Monica, and then on TV, once you've got 20 minutes in that, maybe a few seconds of somebody's house burning up somewhere. Oh, we're live here on camera. It looks like the fire's gone now, and this is the charred Hulk. What do you have to say about being burned out of your home? The Jerry Springerization of the evening news. Keep an eye on that. Then weather, then sports. This is what's known as news being dumbed down to the level of entertainment. I mean, I'm ancient enough now, you know, turning 40 in June, that I remember when there was real news on TV and in the newspaper, and the three big networks even did in-depth documentaries on things like why the Vietnam War was fucking up, corruption in the Pentagon, Coca-Cola slave camps in Florida to make Minute Maid orange juice and things like that, but you don't see that now anymore. I mean, I'm sure part of the motive for multinationals buying up the mass media after the laws were deregulated under Reagan was to silence their best critics and muzzle media as a fourth branch of government to check and balance the other three. But now it's almost become this tabloid merry-go-round daisy chain where you manufacture something like the John Benet Ramsey murder or something, and then that quickly can spin off into a tell-all book that the corporation's book publisher publishes. The author goes on the corporate talk show on the corporate TV station. It then gets made into a movie by the corporate-owned movie studio. The soundtrack album comes out on the corporation's major label. The bands then appear on the talk shows and on MTV, and it all goes around in circles, and people think they're actually learning something important. And even what passes for actual news is very cartoon and icon driven. Anything going on at the national level, it's not, do we really want a NAFTA, a GATT treaty, and a prison building boom? It's all, can Clinton beat Newt in this battle of the Titans? It's icon driven. You know, no offense to Martin Luther King, but we have Martin Luther King Day instead of Civil Rights Day. Again, it's focusing on the icon and the media star instead of any thought or sentiment behind it. What used to be a 60-second soundbite now averages 9 seconds, and the average televised news story now lasts less than a minute. And on the print level, more and more newspapers are being bought up by national corporations, and local coverage and issue coverage disappears almost immediately. You don't have in-depth investigations because it costs too much to put a reporter on one story for months at a time when they could be writing about some fluff, different fluff every single day. And if there's less costly local news, the corporate publishers' stock options go up accordingly, so they have their own motive not to print anything newsworthy in their newspaper if they're going to make any money. I mean, a comical example of this, maybe, is last year, Clinton's State of the Union address got bumped to a later day because they were afraid it might interfere with the Miss USA contest on television. I mean, that shows your priorities of our national entertainment state right there. The Detroit News did a survey of local stations there that showed that of the TV news in Detroit, 2% of the news was devoted to government and politics, and poverty, education, race relations, environment, science, or anything international got 0% during the time period they were studying it. And the reason you get so much fluff is that the news is now packaged like TV sitcoms and dramas and shoot-'em-ups mainly to sell the advertiser's products. It's not quite as blatant as animated cartoon shows about action figures you can then go down and buy at the store, but it's getting close. An executive of Westinghouse who took over CBS came right out and said, "We are here to serve advertisers." Not the public, advertisers. And the LA Times new chief executive officer has a new policy whereby selected people from the different major departments of the paper meet every day with selected people from marketing and advertising to produce those sections of the paper together. You know, it used to be a sacred wall, theoretically, between the news and the advertisers, but not at the LA Times anymore. And determined that whatever section doesn't sell enough ads as the rest will be dropped from the paper entirely. Meaning home and garden and, the thing about TV stars is going to get thicker and thicker and thicker, while no advertiser is going to want their story next to a human interest thing about people who've been hurt by welfare cuts or anything like that. We just won't be able to print that anymore because it's just not going to sell enough ads. That's where this is going. Plus, a lot of news is censored even now for fear of offending an advertiser. The San Francisco Examiner yanked a Sunday column by Stephanie Salter for criticizing Nike, because Nike was sponsoring their little Bay Breakers foot race and they didn't want to offend them. So the person responsible said, "Oh, we didn't kill the story, we just chose not to publish it." That, in my mind, is the worst form of censorship going on in this country today, is what they choose not to tell people. Instead, what's substituted for real debate is right-wing talk shows. More and more, meaner and meaner, louder and louder. Some people laugh in my face when I say Rush Limbaugh is still a problem. Just because they don't see his face on TV anymore doesn't mean he's gone. He still is the most popular radio show host in America. And after the Nutzi onslaught in the '94 election, KSFO here fired every talk show host to the left of Hitler and replaced them with nothing but ultra-right-wingers. Even fired people who worked in the office for being too liberal. And when one of the talk show hosts got protested for saying that people with AIDS should be locked in concentration camps, people began picketing the station, and he went on the air telling people to come down and beat up the picketers. A lot of the influence of people like Rush Limbaugh or Bob Grant in New York, who's virulently racist, that's ABC's flagship station where he is, and they're trying to make him a national thing. The floodgates opened for that after the democratically controlled Congress about, I think this was before the '92 election actually, quietly abolished a law called the Fairness Doctrine, which said that if you have some clown like Limbaugh on the air, you have to give time to the other side. Once the Fairness Doctrine was gone, so was the other side. And now what constitutes debate on TV or in the editorial pages of the paper, whatever, is right-wing versus extreme right-wing. With somebody like Ralph Nader or Noam Chomsky or a Jesse Jackson or anybody from the labor movement, they're just completely wiped out of the media altogether. Their point of view is not allowed. And if that's not enough, Chrysler and Ford, among others, and a couple of the big East Coast phone companies have now sent out notices to every place they advertise saying that they want to be given any advance notice of any articles that contain controversial coverage. That way, they get to act as an in-house censor by threatening to pull their ads for 6 months, the way Ford did when New Yorker magazine had 9 Inch Nails lyrics next to a Mercury ad. They can just threaten to pull the ads, and the article gets cut without us even knowing what they are. But more times than not, they sue. Have you heard of the McLibel case in England, where some London Greenpeace activists were handing out flyers on the streets of London saying what's wrong with McDonald's, and of course stating the obvious on the flyer. And McDonald's responded by suing these people who were unemployed for slander, never guessing that they would then, since they had nothing else to do anyway, they acted as their own attorneys, and the result has been the longest trial in British history. McDonald's won some of their points, lost others, and are appealing the ones they lost. They still won't give in on this one as a way of bullying anybody else from saying anything bad about McDonald's, lest you get tied up in court for years. Oprah Winfrey even got sued. 6 weeks on trial in Amarillo, Texas for slandering cattle. How can you file a lawsuit against somebody for slandering a cow? Well, as Texas Cattleman explained it, she had had a guest on her program pointing out that lax meat inspection, like the Clintonoids just put in, is what led to the outbreak of mad cow disease in England. And he pointed out how this could let E. coli much further out of the bag in America, not to mention our own outbreak of mad cow disease. Oprah said, well, I guess I won't be eating any meat now, or she wasn't going to buy any more hamburgers. Well, the Texas cattlemen said they lost $12 million the next day because beef prices plummeted. Therefore, Oprah should pay them for reimbursement of their property loss. Thankfully, the cattlemen lost. Oprah had the best legal help money could buy. But it got me thinking, maybe that's why these goofy laws keep getting passed in state legislatures now, imposing penalties for slandering cauliflower, slandering peaches, slandering cattle, is because then multinational biotech engineering people with a lot of money in the promotion of frankenfood, can sue to shut environmental activists up. And they won't be able to afford Oprah's lawyers to fight back. You know, there was already a genetically engineered soybean, courtesy of our friends at Monsanto, which they're trying to get farmers to use now and require them, if they use this pesticide-proof soybean, they have to drench it with Monsanto brand Roundup pesticide, which is famous for melting just about everything in its path as a way of getting rid of pests. You wonder whether you really want Roundup going into your system, but if you ask questions, you could get sued for slandering soybeans. Or at least being a barrier to free trade or whatever. That is the purpose of this law. In Ridgewood, New Jersey, they were even able to get an elementary school play canceled because it was talking about third world labor practices of people like Nike, and the deputy superintendent ordered the play nuked because it doesn't show all the good things corporations do. More recently, a high school student in Evans, Georgia got suspended from school for wearing a Pepsi t-shirt on Coca-Cola Day. Suspended from school. I guess they had a whole concept of putting everybody in Coca-Cola t-shirts when some Coca-Cola executives came to the school to spend all day showing students how great Coke was. Is this what we're supposed to be educated for? This is ridiculous. And when they posed all the students in their mandatory Coke t-shirts for the photo with those nice executives from Coke, the one guy lifted up his shirt and there was Pepsi. Let's hear it for pranks. But suspended from school for a Pepsi t-shirt on Coke Day, that's what it's coming to here. Or, for an example, there was a person who had done weather for a radio station in Central California, I think it was Madera, for over 10 years, and they fired him for failing to predict a sunny day on the day they were having the Rush Limbaugh picnic. Did it rain? Yes. But the guy lost his job for forecasting the weather accurately because it interfered with Rush Limbaugh. So I have a better example of this, actually, that happened to me a while back. I don't know if any of you went to that 30th anniversary of the Summer of Love concert in Golden Gate Park, where I walked on stage and suddenly realized when I was on stage, oh my God, I'm the youngest person on the bill. And I'm almost 40. I've got a lot of generations of people I got to speak for during my 15 minutes of fame while they're setting up the Jefferson Airplane here. And so I pointed out that one of the key differences is in the 60s in the Summer of Love, you sure as hell wouldn't see corporate sponsors like Miller Beer having a giant balloon over by the concession stand. And if it were the 60s, that kind of thing wouldn't be there. Well, within minutes, the Miller balloon wasn't there. But Miller then pulled $15,000 from the event, saying that the people who put it on had failed to guarantee that the artist would not say anything bad about Miller on stage. And they popped our balloon. And this was not a Bill Graham production. Bill Graham heavy-handedly tried to copyright the name Summer of Love and deny anybody else the right to use it, but thankfully they failed. And Chet Helms, who orchestrated the original Summer of Love, and his people were able to put it on instead. But Chet and his crew are a grassroots organization that don't have $15,000. So this was a serious blow. And finally, behind the scenes shaming got hot enough that Miller kicked in the money anyway after the Helms people agreed to patch the balloon, which apparently was put out with one cigarette, I might add. It takes a child to raise, R-A-Z-E, a village. To soften the blows of this kind of heavy-handed corporate fascism, we're being bombarded with more and more propaganda showing us how much we're supposed to love this. I mean, that Nike swooshtica on Tiger Woods' hat is everywhere now. It's almost like the swooshtica really is the actual mark of the beast. Think about it. It's everywhere. More and more buildings and structures are getting named after corporations. In Denver, they just broke ground to build a new basketball arena called the Pepsi Center. And in San Francisco, they're building a new baseball stadium nobody really needs. And are they going to name it after Willie Mays or our dear departed megalomaniac Joseph Alioto, the former mayor they're trying to name something after right now? No, guess what the name of the stadium is? They're naming it after the phone company. Noted sports hero, Pac Bell Park. They're taking over events as well. I noticed in the TV guide over New Year's where they have all those college football bowl games, one of them, which ironically used to be called the Independence Bowl, is now called the Weed Eater Bowl. Yeah, we're really winning this year at school, man. We're all going to get in the RVs and go down to the Weed Eater Bowl. What is wrong with this picture? The worst impact really is in the schools, though. And, you know, all the mean-spirited budget cuts, courtesy of the family values mobs, guess who's ready to step in with some money here? You know, Jefferson County in Colorado took all this money from Pepsi to build an athletic facility in return for making Pepsi the official drink of the Jefferson County school system. Poor family, need your milk at lunch? Well, guess what you get? And in San Francisco now, the special field trip bus for the kids is the Old Navy bus. The fun bus is painted all blue with the Old Navy, you know, owned by Gap, logo on the side. In Colorado Springs, Colorado, they're selling billboard space on the side of school buses, as well as space inside the schools near the athletic facilities. And again, Pepsi is the official drink down there as well. Of course, a lot of schools that wind up having to rely on things like Channel 1, that piped-in news that comes on every day if you have it in school, that has 1 minute of commercials in addition to the news for a captive audience and everything. Most of the people stuck with these corporate so-called donations are urban schools, largely with kids of color in them who don't have as much money as the others. As they're being gutted through the budget cuts, what are they getting taught instead? Well, some of these handouts, courtesy of the generous corporations, including an incident in Staten Island, New York, where kids began coming home one day with instant Calvin Klein tattoos all over themselves because they came free inside the bookbinders provided by Calvin Klein. And according to San Francisco Bay Guardian, there's some real doozies in the environmental education department being provided by people like oil companies. Shell Oil has one called Fueling America's Future. And Fueling America's Future has a young couple getting back to nature in their Jeep. When the male passenger talks about the wonders of nature and the female driver responds, "What about the wonders of cars, trucks, and gasoline?" That's how we travel, see the sights, live where we want, and work where we want. And as the Shell logo, according to The Guardian, lingers in the left-hand corner of the screen, the guy asks, "What about nature?" The woman responds, "It takes gasoline to power the vehicles to get us to nature." And gasoline comes from nature. Meanwhile, Procter & Gamble has distributed Decision Earth to 75,000 schools, including the lessons for the kids such as clear cutting removes all trees to create new habitat for wildlife. And it, quote, opens the forest floor to sunshine. Thus stimulating growth. Even then, drilling into the kids, you have to grow, stimulating growth. All growth is good, and it provides food for animals. They don't mention which animals, if any, mind you, but meanwhile, the other real big enemy of education in this country, gaining a bigger stronghold over our lives inch by inch so that you don't really notice, because when people do, they tend to get a little angry, is the religious right. Christian supremacist extremists. Bit by bit, they've been seizing control of the state level of the apparatus of the Republican Party, which is why more and more militia nut nitwits keep winding up in Congress and the like. And of course, if that doesn't seem mainstream, the corporate press can always change that in a few years and things. They finally succeeded in bullying the National Association of Biology Teachers into opening in their platform a door whereby evolution isn't the only explanation for how we got here, and maybe there was a master hand after all. CNN rejected ads for parents of friends of lesbian and gays out of fear of offending Pat Robertson. Alabama Governor Fob James is now saying he's going to call out the National Guard if he has to. Kind of like George Wallace in the schoolhouse door saying segregation forever. Only this time is to put the 10 Commandments up in all the schools. And a committee, at least, in the Tennessee State Senate passed a law whereby the teachers who say evolution is a scientific fact can be fired. My favorite of these is in Gaston, North Carolina, where concerned parents demanded that Africa and Germany be removed from all maps and globes because those places are anti-Christian. And that the Greek alphabet be removed from history classes because it might promote homosexuality. But in some places, people like this have a hell of a lot of power. For example, Oklahoma City, thanks to some behind-the-scenes lobbying by the Christian Coalition, people will soon be going on trial for possessing videos of the tin drum because it has a little kid snuggling up to somebody, therefore it's child porn. A store called Planet Comics and Science Fiction was shut down entirely through repeated police harassment. And the Oklahoma City cops even stormed 6 video stores demanding all the names of people who had rented that noted subversive pornographic film, The Tin Drum. And they even arrested somebody who was in the process of watching it in his own home. All this was courtesy of a group called Oklahomans for Children and Families. But the reason the Christian Coalition had such an easy time persuading the cops they were on solid legal grounds is another thing inserted into that Telecommunications Act that Clinton and Gore and the Newtsies were so fond of, was the 1996 Child Pornography Prevention Act, which essentially classifies just about everything as child porn. Even a 40-year-old woman in pigtails in a porno magazine can get that thing busted for child porn. In Oklahoma City, that means that all but Playboy and Penthouse are now banned from the entire town. Meanwhile, Randall Terry of Operation Rescue fame is now attacking books, where his minions have been going into bookstores, opening up books by noted photographer Jock Sturgis, who the FBI tried to bust for child porn several years ago and failed. They just walk in, tear pages out of the book, and leave. Kind of like super predators or those lawless youth who don't respect authority. In North Carolina now, in order to get a grant from the State Arts Council, artists must sign an agreement saying they won't offend any local governments. And even if Jesse Helms at the national level is scary, wait till you see what they're like at the local level there. Meanwhile, Christian Coalition-controlled decency squads who operate anonymously in Virginia and Prince William and Fairfax counties have been getting videos and video stores busted right and left, and almost every video they've gone after has African American people in them. Can books be far behind? Not if Focus on the Family, the second most powerful religious organization to the Christian Coalition, has their way. Several years ago, they started a campaign to bully libraries into taking anything that offends them off the shelves under their Family-Friendly Libraries campaign. You know, and family-friendly libraries means all literature promotes the superiority of the family home with mother and father living monogamously like Donna Reed or Leave It to Beaver or whatever. No mention of sex or sex education or AIDS prevention or the existence of gay people or anything like that. You know, anything that might corrupt their child should be taken out of the library or put in a special room where you can't have children in and things like that. And for the hell of it, when I was back visiting in Colorado, I figured, what the hell, I'm going to go visit Focus on the Family. So I go to their little visitor center, which they've got a green highway exit sign from the government to promote down there. And immediately I walk in, and if you think the Walmart greeters are scary, people descended on me like locusts and whatnot. How you doing today? Where'd you come from? What'd you like to see? You know, I was just like, I just wanted to look around. And I thought I dressed straight enough for them and whatnot, but I was getting followed, and eventually I wound up in the gift shop, and do you have anything about rock music? And they directed me to a video on how Beavis and Butthead was the cause of the downfall of children's behavior in our society and made kids start fires. But the best thing they had in this citizen bulletin of theirs was part of their anti-library campaign. There was a whole bale of them right by the front door, and I was thinking, well, if I take the whole bale, nobody else can read these. But there were people standing right above me as I knelt down with their arms folded watching, so I was only able to get a handful of them and funnel one down to the Colorado State Library people and stuff. The American Library Association believes children should have access to all material, no matter how violent or obscene. What lurks in the library? We have a cartoon of what lurks in the library, showing little kids eagerly reading Playboy, Pipe Bombs Illustrated, Anarchy Atlas. I mean, I wish this was the library when I was a kid. Because on the shelf behind them, you have access to Is Sniffing Glue for You? Cannibalism, an alternative lifestyle. My Pal Manson. Next to Curious George is The Fun with Fire. Fire, fire, fire. You know, I'm sure. On another shelf, Naked Tennis. But enough people are believing this that attacks on library books and school curriculums have skyrocketed. even though this is direct political activity, which you're not supposed to be able to be a tax-deductible organization for, the Christian Coalition gets away with it anyway, and the Clintonoids never bother to go after them for tax evasion. It kind of makes you wonder who they're down with. And if that's not enough, wait till you meet the Promise Keepers. Me, Tarzan, you, Jane, in Nuremberg rally glitz. They finally got the front cover of the national magazines with their Million Bigot March featuring this tyrannical football coach looking like Michael Landon on angel dust, claiming that all the Promise Keepers are trying to do is make stronger, more conscientious men be nicer to their wives and not commit adultery anymore, but they emphasize man is the head of household. And Bill McCartney, the scary coach in question, is virulently anti-gay and worked very hard to help ensure the anti-gay amendment passed in Colorado, and virulently anti-abortion as well, and of course is a fundamentalist Christian. And they claim the Promise Keepers is not political, but their own internal memos show they intend to enter politics in the 2000 election on a national scale. So what do you do about all this? I've said before in some of these earlier shows, don't hate the media, become the media. At a time when things are so dumbed down, people's own zines, the stuff on the internet and whatnot is more important than ever. I think that's probably the most important thing punk has given the world, even more than all the cool music, is the do-it-yourself independent underground zine. If you got something to say, don't wait for sassy to say it. Get sassy and say it. And of course that goes for the internet too. There's all kinds of things you can learn off there, and you can contribute there even if it's just a personal anecdote or something like that. Some of my favorite zines are the same way, when people don't talk about the same bands that everybody else does, but just talk about personal experience or people they know of any age who have kind of a cool angle on things, stuff like that. But again, with the net, be careful. Shop around. If you hear something too wild to be true, that's probably what it is. Get a second opinion. I mean, there's no better example of the weird stuff on the net than people debating as we speak the details of my recent shooting death. There also was a big debate after I got jumped by some thugs in Berkeley at a show and my knee got smashed backwards and stuff and my leg got broken. In part thanks to Maximum Rock and Roll, there was a debate on whether or not I deserved it because I was some sort of alleged rich rock star. Therefore, I deserved to be beaten to a pulp. And people were logging in saying, oh yeah, he deserves it. I saw him driving around a BMW just the other day. Never mind, I couldn't even walk, let alone drive at the time. Oh, no, I saw him on the bus writing poetry. And both those people identified me by a goatee I'd shaved off 6 months earlier. Meanwhile, Michael Dean of Bomb went on the internet trying to get an email address for me, and 12 different people came back all claiming they were me. I mean, you gotta watch this or the internet can get dumbed down to the CB radio craze of the 1970s. You know, breaker, breaker, good buddy, am I talking to a real trucker? How different is that from, oh wow, I'm online with Courtney Love. The net is a great thing and should not be censored, but use it intelligently, for crying out loud. Another major tool that I wholeheartedly support is, if you're tired of all the dumb stuff being pumped at you through TV and all the garbage being played that's allegedly alternative on corporate radio, and keep in mind CBS Radio has announced that this spring they're going to start selling playlist space on their radio stations to major labels. You know, I guess if they announce it ahead of time, it's not payola or something like that, but One more example of corporatizing where somebody smaller who makes more interesting music can't get on the air at all, where you get an unending diet of Alanis Hootie fish over and over and over again. Pirate radio is a really good thing for this reason. I'm hoping as the technology gets cheaper, pirate television won't be far behind. We're going to need it once the Telecommunications Act really hits home. And pirate radio has already gotten powerful enough that our lovely federal government is scared shitless. For example, last October, I believe it was, federal judge Claudia Wilken in Oakland ruled that Berkeley Free Radio did have a right to go to trial in their conflict with the Federal Communications Commission. A major victory in the short run for pirate radio. Let's hear it for Stephen Dunifer and everybody at Berkeley Free Radio. The federal response was quick and swift in Florida. In Tampa, Florida, Doug Brewer of Party Pirate Radio and his wife were surprised in the wee hours one morning to find out their entire block had been cordoned off and a SWAT team came in accompanied by FBI agents, customs agents, immigration, ATF, person claiming he represented the CIA, who slammed them onto the floor, handcuffed them, and held them at gunpoint on the floor for 12 hours, even threatening to shoot their cat for disobedience because the cat jumped on the kitchen counter. As they tore the house to pieces, Gestapo style, carting off almost anything connected with electricity, let alone broadcasting. There was a little antenna in the backyard. They used a crane from the other side of the house to pull the antenna down, smashing up the house in the process. All this for one little pirate radio station that even helped the police track loose criminals from time to time and stuff. The message being, if you want to play something on the air that people really want to hear, we will march into your home with the Gestapo. As long as people can't even start their own radio station without fear of the Gestapo in this country, we sure as hell don't live in a free country, do we? And all this gives me hope. Because this many people being thrown out with welfare cuts, job cuts, etc. This is the sort of thing of which revolutions are made. And visions of carpet bombing, the Promise Keepers dance in my head, drive-bys moving from Mission Street to Wall Street. But there's got to be a better way, a nonviolent way. Which brings me to my last piece. This is called Wake Up and Smell the Noise. The corporate lords, their loyal opposition, and that vast majority known as the rest of us, all agree on one thing. America has gone to hell. The whole world seems damn near ruined. We might have been a great country once, but we sure as hell ain't anymore. Everyone knows it. Everyone feels it. Everyone asks, what for? Hospitals close because there ain't no money. Playgrounds close because there ain't no money. Schools can't teach because there ain't no money. Roads and bridges fall apart because there ain't no money. People sleeping in the street because there ain't no money. And every time it's the same old story. Gotta make do without because there ain't no money. There ain't no money because we've run out of money. Where did that money go? The money ain't gone. It's just been stolen by the kind of people who already have so much money, they can't think of anything better to do than plot and scheme ways to make even more money. If that means screwing everyone else, so much the better. At least that way someone wins. If you ask me, that kind of greed is the most dangerous drug on earth. What really does more damage to the world? Drug addiction or wealth addiction? As Noam Chomsky said recently, just open up Fortune magazine, who reports corporate profits dazzling last year, even more splendid this year. Profits will keep booming till the end of the century, right? Read down their list of the Fortune 500. That's who stole the money. Wake up and smell the noise. As a Japanese radical group in the 60s once said, we are being farmed. We thought we'd be so much further along into the dazzling, limitless future, like those snazzy ads from the old magazines at the dawn of the atomic age, where appliances rained like magic from heaven as we flew through the air in our bubble-top cars. Bigger, better technology is the magic key to more fun, more leisure time, less degrading busy work. Why? With more and more work in the hands of technology, we might not have to work anymore at all. There will be plenty for everyone and enough time to buy it. Instead, the people that stole the money have aimed technology in a different direction, investing that stolen money into the development of ever nastier ways and ever nastier tools for treating the rest of us like slaves. Survey after buried survey shows people everywhere are less happy, working harder, getting less, more frightened, and less able to take care of themselves. 2001, A Space Odyssey, is looking more and more like a one-way ticket to Rwanda. Wake up and smell the noise. The brave new world is a cyber plantation where, thanks to so-called free trade under the NAFTA and GATT treaties and the upcoming MAI, it is now officially sealed in writing that global corporations can act as their own sovereign nations. Laws don't apply to them anymore, and every human being in every country on earth must now compete against each other for who will work for the lowest wage. According to Jeremy Rifkin in his book, The End of Work, 3/4 of all the jobs in America, that's 90 million of 124 million existing jobs, are slowly being made extinct by technology. A lot of people who've reviewed that book say Jeremy Rifkin is exaggerating. So let's cut that figure in half. Cut it by 2/3. That's still 30 million more people unemployed because of computers, downsizing, and the NAFTA-GATCHA swindle. Aren't at least some of them going to be a little upset? But the Wall Street robber barons are so caught up in their dirty little game to suck up and control more and more and more money, they forgot one thing. Who's going to buy all their snazzy new techno toys when no one has a job anymore? And when meaningful work is gone and there ain't no future, and the soon-to-be former middle-class kids are dropping out and shoegazing, while the poor people who know it and feel it are ready to kill, where does Wall Street expect all these people to go? What are we all supposed to do? Die? There's no way this can last. There's no way this can last. On a lot of smashed horizons, the future is gone, and people are already getting desperate enough to do something stupid. Oklahoma City's only happened once because we're damn lucky, that's all. As the veneer of democracy fades away, as the world's downsized until it explodes, as the shanty towns piled behind the malls become visible, as the savages on the other side of the wall break through, and everybody from gun-crazy militias to gangster rappers to community activists to working families just struggling to put food on the table, all mad at the same thing, you'd think there'd be a widespread, united opposition, right? Instead, America is on the verge of civil war. No, it's already here. Unspoken, unacknowledged, and mostly on the surface, bloodless civil war. A class war marketed as a race war. of sensationalized sound bites and tabloid images where people who used to say nigger now get away with saying welfare cheats. Where someone used to say spick, they can now say illegal immigrants. And it's become downright trendy to bash black single mothers at a time when most teenage mothers in America are white, while over half the mothers in a low-crime paradise like Sweden are not married. It's almost as though the message between the lines here is, we don't want their kind to reproduce. I first saw welfare cheat used as the code word for nigger when Ku Klux Klan wizard David Duke ran for governor of Louisiana and got the Republican nomination. Next, I saw it move on over to Jesse Helms' 1990 Senate campaign, where the new nigger word for affirmative action was quotas, preferences. From there, it spread like a virus, finding its way into the venomous, fang-dripping mouth of George Bush, followed eagerly by Clinton and Gore promising to end welfare as we know it, multiplied by 100 by the Contract on America thugs, made respectable by magazine cover story hype of white supremacist-funded research sold in book form as the bell curve. And now, Californians, egged on by that grumpy little Marine, Pete Wilson, once again come out of the closet and reveal themselves as Mickey Mouse with a white hood on and vote to ban affirmative action and ready themselves to ban bilingual education. Sometimes when you look at this, it's very revealing to trace back who's been mentally networking with whom. As usual, the real conflict is not what they say it is. It's not the left versus the right, but the top versus the bottom. A class war marketed as a race war that we are being manipulated and programmed to fight to keep us all from turning our most potent weapons, our time, our energy, and our souls against the real enemy and taking back what is rightfully ours. We are living in the new dark ages, only if we let ourselves. I repeat, there's no way this can last. It never does. That's the best and most dangerous part. Throughout history, seemingly invincible dictatorial death regimes in Germany, Russia, South Africa, Czechoslovakia, Nicaragua, Chile, all had one thing in common. They all failed. They all collapsed. They all destroyed themselves. The question isn't, will there be an uprising, but what form will it take? Will it be violent? Will it be peaceful? Will it be humane enough to work? Will people fight long and intelligently enough to make it work? Wake up and smell the noise. Out of nowhere, when we least expect it, the piñata is finally smashed to bits, and out of its guts rains all that power that's held us down for so long. What happens when that door does open? Will we all be too scared to go in? Will we all sit on our butts and wait for somebody else to do the work for us until something more horrible than what we got now beats us to it? Newt Gingrich, eyes gouged out, hanging from a tree. Corpse pelted with rocks and bottles. The crowd dances with glee. But in the long run, what will that solve in daily life for you and me? Most important of all is after the fall. That's when we must be ready. Who would have guessed that the white apartheid regime in South Africa would go as relatively peacefully as they did, and all hell didn't break loose right afterwards? Someone was ready. Who would have guessed that a playwright best known for being thrown in jail for his beliefs would wind up becoming president of Czechoslovakia? A brutal communist dictatorship replaced by an elected parliament with rock musicians in it. And filmmakers, actors, and longtime frontline anti-government activists. Someone was ready. Like any government, the Czech Republic's turned out far from perfect, but what's now called the Velvet Revolution is still, to me, inspiring. It took a painfully long time, but in the long run, all the Russian tanks in Prague couldn't stop the will of a people so fed up with being screwed, they brought them down by word of mouth. Ever thought about what you would do if that went down here? Really thought about what would I do if I suddenly found myself in a position to help take the bull by the horns and start fixing what's wrong? What would I do if I found myself in charge because the pigs in charge weren't there anymore? Where would I want to be? What would I want to do first? What would I want to do second if I was in charge? Would I just want to kick butt? It's easy to spot and complain about what's wrong. How would you make it right? We go on and on about the big takeover. What will you do if you do take over? Is my American-sized ego run amok yet again when I ask myself from time to time what I would do if I was in the president's shoes right now? Not necessarily. Today's mind expansion can be tomorrow's key to survival, if not salvation. To think for yourself, what would I do if I was mayor of this town right now? What would I do if I had the power to clean up a violent, corrupt police department? What would I do if I was in the place of the boss I hate so much at work? Or school board, school teacher, doctor, lawyer, union representative, machinist, farmer, mother, father, idea man, in some situation I hear about right now. If I put myself in their place, what would I do? What am I good at? What can I do best? What would I most want to do that's different from the rest? What hole can I fill with what I know how to do? It's an ongoing thing that takes years of bouncing stuff like this around in your head when you feel like it, putting it back on the shelf when you don't, just so long as you use it, develop it, keep getting better at it. Because like any contact sport, in crisis mode brain wrestling, practice makes perfect. And the more I delve into this myself, the more I know how much I don't know. And that's half the fun. If someone does have to step in from the anti-government community, I hope to hell it ain't me. But it never hurts to start getting ready, just in case it is you. Which would you rather burn, a flag or a bank? It's not that easy. We're all going to need each other if we do have to run things someday. No problem that affects a lot of people is simple to solve. Not everyone who feels the same pain agrees on where it comes from or what to do about it. There's always someone who wants to change it all back, afraid of the future because they're just trying to survive. Most people don't hate the rich people screwing them half as much as they wish they were one of them. How do you reach them? Some things change slowly, some things never do, and as I've said before, nothing's ever going to change till we who want the change understand why different kinds of people want what they want and think the way they do. When they wake up and smell the noise but hear it differently, do we hear them too? There's nothing cops and corporations love more than to sit back and watch us turn off everyone we think we're trying to help by splitting into nitpicky, power-trippy, backbiting factions and tearing each other apart. I want to be leader. No, I want to be leader. No, I want to be leader. No, I want to be leader. Blah, blah, backstab, backstab. If you don't agree with me on everything, you must be against me. That's poison. Anyone who's not a vegetarian is automatically evil. All hip-hop is bad because some gangster rappers are sexist. If you don't believe every word of the Bible, you're a devil worshiper. If you're not gay, you must be homophobic. Look at me wrong, you're a racist. Criticize Israel, ooh, you hate Jews. Wear lipstick, you can't be a feminist. Divide, divide, divide. Let the powerful few keep the quarreling majority from sharing in what is rightfully everyone's. And speaking of divide, most pathetic of all, the only important thing in the whole world is the punk rock scene. And you're a sellout traitor to the sacred punk rock scene if you so much as disagree with me in any way, listen to music I don't like, dress funny, dress normal, laugh without permission, or even so much as speak to any artist who ever made a dime off their years of hard work without at least beating them up first. Wake up and smell the noise. In these times, we can't afford to get caught up in blind fundamentalism of any kind. There's too many different kinds of people in this world, in this country, in this building, to hide behind one-issue isolationist chicken shit anymore. Here we are, in the richest country in the world, and it's getting as horrible now as it was in the Great Depression of the 1930s. It rips me up inside seeing broken men and women on street corners in the rain holding up signs saying homeless will work for food. Hard as it may be for some crybabies to believe, people in that situation could care less if Green Day and the Offspring sold out when they signed to major labels. Other things and other truths are more important. The cutthroats that run things cheat and kill to get where they are. We got nothing but our hearts, our souls, and our energy. But look what that's done as a simple spark, starting fires throughout history all over the world. Even in America, we stopped the Vietnam War. We got rid of the first Nixon. The whole Berkeley free speech movement wasn't planned, it just happened when the cops were trying to drag a protester away from campus in a police car. First one protester stood in front of the car, Chinese style, then another one, then another, then by the dozen, then by the hundreds, they surrounded that cop car and wouldn't let it leave for 32 hours. That got on TV, and the whole world was watching, and a movement or two was born. 500,000 people block a dam in India. A dam gets canceled in Tasmania because people just wouldn't stop chaining themselves to construction equipment. March 25th, 1995, 10,000 people walked out of school and marched on City Hall in New York City. Not just students, but teachers and principals, parents, all united against Republican budget cuts. No surprise that got blacked out of the national news. Education benefits slashed by right-wingers in Italy. Even 5-year-old kids walked out on strike. Schools and universities in Rome stayed virtually empty until the budget cuts were restored. When the French government tried American-style budget cuts, the workers didn't sit there and grumble about it like a bunch of Americans. They went on strike and shut the whole country down for a month. And in Mexico, kidnapping millionaires has become what the business world likes to refer to as a growth industry. One more thing the corporate media doesn't dare tell you is that a few thousand rebels, if that, in Chiapas in Mexico, have uncorked such a nationwide outpouring of rage that people by the thousands are demonstrating against the government, inequality, and corruption somewhere in Mexico every damn day. Will Mexico dare allow its people genuine, peaceful change? Will the people there be ready, or will it be the other kind? Wake up and smell the noise. The unified, wealthy, powerful few are only as strong as their weakest link. A well-thought-out surgical strike is all it can take to cut off the tail that's wagging the dog. Then it will be our turn to deal with the dog. Or should I say porcupine? If we each grab a quill, we'll be strong enough to drive. No more lifetimes preparing for death. No more give me lithium or give me meth. No more can't fix nothing because everything's ruined already. Why try? No more being a spectator in our own lives. Even thinking about this stuff can't help but make you smarter. Help break out of no I can't to yes I can to now I must. We're not equal till we're equal. We're not free until we're free. I'd rather work for something I want and not get it than work or vote for something I don't want and get it. And what we got now, I repeat, there's no way this can last. Wake up and smell the noise. Corporate dictatorship is headed for a train wreck, and that train wreck will happen in our lifetime. Not right away, but in our lifetime. And if we aren't ready to cut the crap and know how to work with each other, to zero in and focus on what's really important and have an idea of what we each have got to do to be ready to do it right, we will get fooled again.